Welcome to Splunk Talk, the only podcast that's all Splunk and no junk. I am your host, Burch, with co-host,
I'm Hal.
and today we're on episode 46 of season 2. We're going to have Clara Merriman on, and we're going to talk all about her unique background and current role at Splunk. But before we get into any of that, any new business, Hal?
Well, I'm happy. I'm excited. It's that time of the year, Birch. The holidays are upon us.
You're so deadpan. I'm happy. I'm excited.
I'm happy. Yeah. I actually had a good friend of my wife's and our friend, our neighbor. We'd known her for a few years, and what I learned later that she went to my wife and said, "Does Hal like me because he's so dry and I don't know?"
And she said, "No, he's just engineer. He's 50% engineer."
Yes. And we got past that.
It's his cultural background.
No, I mean it's right. It's holiday season. This is it's good. Time for change. We got a new year coming up.
Yeah.
So yeah, it's good. I'm doing well.
That's right. Despite the fact that we'll probably get around to releasing this in like the summer, it is currently just as frosty outside as it is in your background. So for anyone watching the video, Hal, is that one of your AI doohickey new age fangle hipster youth renderings?
Yes, it is one of those fancy new age hipster renderings.
Well, in my day, we used to have to render by cutting letters out of a magazine and sending them as notes to people we didn't like. I realize I've exposed that I wrote ransom notes.
Excellent.
And that's my creepy character.
I like your creepy character. I don't know that I would have said creepy. Like no? I crotchety, maybe a little slight. Not even.
He's
really
writing
crotchety.
Ransom notes. We just figured out.
Yeah,
and he does a piss poor job of hiding it.
But it wasn't that creepy. I mean,
yeah.
Is that what you bring out for Halloween?
That's what I bring out for Halloween. I bring out all the stop.
Okay. All right. Just the one. Just the one stop.
One stop.
What have you been up to lately?
Oh, so I forget if did we talk about observability? How I've been learning a lot about the observability products lately.
You've at least said that on record.
Okay.
I don't know how far you went with it.
Yeah. Well, I've been learning a lot about them. It's pretty nifty stuff. But one of the things I like an epiphany that really excites me is when I started, I don't know if I said this on the podcast, but I was trying to wrap my head around like why are there kind of like these other product suites for observability? Like Splunk can handle logs and traces and metrics. Like it can do all of those things.
You're like, why do we need something else?
Yeah, why something else? And it started to dawn on me, okay, these are like more purpose built. So the engine is like more tuned. And why is that? Well, it's because the industry has essentially coalesced around like what defines the structure of a trace, what defines the structure of a metric. So these things have been consistent enough that we can say, despite their free text form, they're essentially structured.
Okay.
And if we know that they're,
pause for a second. Define melt. And metrics, events, logs, traces.
Ooh.
Like I feel like we've never actually gone too far into that disambiguation because everyone who's been with the podcast for a while, that we talked about Splunk Core, that core platform, and that's all we used to have, and it's been a long time since then actually. But I don't know that we've ever talked about traces, for example. That's kind of the bigger one.
So
because metrics, that's you could do that in the in Splunk D, and you can collect metrics. What's the big deal?
Yeah. So are you asking what are they?
Traces are different than metrics. It's all machine data.
It's all
What's special about a trace? You just talked about how you've had things custom built for that particular structure. What's the big deal about a trace?
So I'm not as strong on the trace front as I am on the metrics front, but let's see if I got this right. Like a trace consists of a series of spans.
Mm-hmm.
So I almost visualize like a stack, like if you remember stack traces, like when things
Mm-hmm.
crap out and
Mm-hmm.
you see like, oh, it entered these, like these are the footsteps it took through the different lines of code. So
Mm-hmm.
you can think of each of those lines. I'm probably oversimplifying, but you can think of each of those as like
No,
a
that's
span.
good.
And so it's
Yeah.
interesting, like each system can send in its span to the observability platform, which
Mm-hmm.
then is sort of is like, send me all of your spans. I will wait here and stitch them together into a trace. And it
Okay.
has that also a crotchety voice when it
Yeah.
does that.
Does it
Yeah.
that? Okay. It does.
Yeah,
That's
we have a REST API called like backslash crotchety.
okay.
And so it receives all those spans, stitches them together, and it's like,
Mm-hmm.
you get a trace, you get a trace. I don't know why it's Oprah with that voice. Um, but yeah, so you
It,
you then have constructed these traces. Now
okay.
it's interesting. You can some people like some customers might sample, so they might not send all of that. They might send
Mm-hmm.
a subset, and you get some
Mm-hmm.
interesting use cases, right? Because the amount that you sample, and you can think of it even if you're more familiar with logs, the amount that you sample of traces, logs, metrics, any of these things, kind of gives you a confidence level. Your sample set of what's going on. If you're sampling like 1%,
Mm-hmm.
how like if you were to survey the population, who would you vote for in the next political election rather than the non-political election, and you said you only asked 1% of the people, how confident would you be that
Right. Right.
what you got in that 1% is representative? So
Mm-hmm.
you have to find that right sample percentage that's going to be effective. But if you end up being like having that, hey, we're going to actually sample everything. We're not going to sample. We're going to just bring it all in, which you can do with our product. We have like full fidelity, and like that's kind of some of the cool points that make
Mm-hmm.
our stuff unique. Um, when you do that, you can actually then have more like even support case type things. Like when someone calls in, they're like, "Hey, I've had a problem with this like shopping cart transaction or whatever," right? Like they
Mm-hmm.
could look at the traces and see like I see your click flow because I
Mm-hmm.
know that every single person's activity is in
Mm-hmm.
here because I now got it all in there.
So
So
what I'm
yeah.
saying, what I'm hearing you say, this is the evolution of something that conceptually we talked about for quite a while using the
Mm,
core platform. But in reality, it was hard to get there, and most customers did not get all the way there. And I'm kind of referring to, you could say the SPL command transaction,
mm,
right?
to
There's some
stitch
pieces of
disparate
this
things
that you could
together.
do,
Yeah.
but did people do that? Well, it's actually hard and it's computationally expensive and memory expensive to do it that way in the core product. So
So
people didn't do it that much as a result. That
yeah,
was
and
actually a
so
limitation.
this that's a great point, and it sets up kind of what I was getting at originally. That like once we know the structure, we know what a span is, we know how to stitch those together as a trace, or we know what a metric is, just like
Hmm.
that little
Hmm.
JSON text of here's the thing we're measuring, here's the value of it that it was measured at that observed time, and here's like what it was that we measured. um like those metrics, those are generally structured. There's an agreement of what that looks like.
Hmm.
Same with spans consisting of a trace. So now if you know those things, you can essentially create a platform that's more purpose built, like an engine that's more appropriate for it. And I had this analogy that appears to work pretty well. Imagine if you had a table, like
Hmm.
a list of products, or I don't know, a financial, like your bank statement. You have
Right.
like a
Okay.
table, like debits and credits.
Okay.
Now, you could put that in a free form Word document or Google
Like
Doc,
a table.
like a table. You could
Yeah.
do that. But you know that it has a structure. You know that
Yep.
there's a date, time, what the merchant and the amount. So
Right.
you know that there's a structure to it.
Hmm.
So yes, you could do it in a table, but then like getting math from that can be computationally or skillfully difficult.
Hmm.
But if you put it in a more purpose-built solution like Excel, a spreadsheet software, you now have used an engine that's more appropriate for the structure of that data because you know the data has structure. And so you're now able to do things that were otherwise really difficult. And so
Right.
you've essentially democratized those transaction things that might be otherwise really hard. And with that, hello, Clara.
A challenger joins.
There we
A
go. Sorry, I was
challenger
muted.
joins.
Hi.
Hi.
Hey, Clara.
We were
Welcome.
just
Welcome.
talking observability.
Oh, hot topic.
Hot topic.
I think we can ask her some questions about observability. But first, we
Uh,
I
should probably ask a little bit about her, the person.
Yes. So we did introduce that you'll be joining us today. I see you don't have your purple hair on, but
No,
I have a feeling it's not far from you.
no, I'll show you. It is. Hold on, let me see. I got to turn off my background.
Okay.
It's right here
Hey.
with all my most of my other Splunk swag behind me.
Yep.
Nice. Clara,
Yep.
welcome to the podcast. We're so happy to have you. I guess where
mine.
we. Oh, nice. I feel I'm the outsider here. You two both have fezzes. I'm fezzless. But I don't
sad.
take a fez to that. So Clara, we always like to have people start by telling us their orange story, which is a silly way that I mispronounced origin story. But we did establish that you're currently doing Splunk at Splunk here at Splunk. But before we get into any of that, I would love to hear how
Let's
you got.
break for commercial.
Let's break for a commercial. Tommy's soap. Thank you.
Don't forget
Clara,
to like and subscribe, and use coupon code NORD15 for 50% off to your VPN purchase. Thank you.
Yeah.
We really don't have any sponsors at all, Clara.
I think you just promoted NordVPN.
I think I actually did. I think I actually accidentally did.
You accidentally promoted a real product.
Whoops. Okay.
Yeah. Clara.
Just a bit about yourself, Clara.
When did you first get into tech?
I kind of stumbled into it on accident.
Yes.
So I went to college in South Dakota, and I got my bachelor's in math. I don't know what I wanted to do with it. I wanted to graduate. So I got my bachelor's in math, and then right before graduation, I got offered a job at this really cool company in South Dakota called Sonify Solutions. And I started as a market researcher. So I did a lot of like survey analysis and stuff like that to try and help them figure out stuff to help improve their market share, right? Like to bring in more customers and retain customers, stuff like that. So there's a lot of survey analysis, white paper, stuff like that. And then the company had a lot of changes going on, and eventually I ended up in an IT department, and we had gotten Splunk and stuff, and so I was working with Splunk, bringing in the data, doing a lot of the reporting and stuff, and like front end stuff in Splunk mostly.
How did you find doing market research coming from a math background? Like, was it almost like quant, or did you feel stimulated?
It was a lot of math. It was a lot of math.
Okay.
I use this product, if you know what SPSS, that does a lot of like A/B testing, T-stats, all that kind of. So I was using math, and it was kind of cool to actually. I used math just long enough to pay off my student loans. And then that's when we had a database. We used SPSS to do all of the analytics and stuff on it. And then after I don't even know, I probably wasn't even there a year. We were bought a few months after I started by another VC or something. And the new CTO that came on board lived next door to a Splunk employee, I think. So that's how he found out about Splunk. And then he brought it to us, and we started with one use case. We took down doing all of this analytic work in SPSS from 8-hour searches and reporting to an hour or something. It went down and so that was just one use case, and we're like, oh, now we need to do this everywhere. And
more.
It was not easy transitioning business intelligence to SPL. So that's what SPSS is for. It's very great with BI. And so creating SPL that did A/B testing and all stuff, it was not easy. But it was good. It was hard work. It was fun work. The data that company has is super cool. Because they have what they do is provide interactive solutions to hotels and hospitals. So when you turn on your TV and you have DirecTV or something, right? And you click on the menu, and you've got your channel guide and movie on demand guide and stuff. They did all of the interaction for that on the TV, and then they started. I think they got into some more smart things like thermostats and stuff like that to control all from the TV. So it was just really cool data, the A/B testing for like price testing and what the screens look like to see what fonts, colors, placement, stuff like that impacted what people focused on the screen and stuff. It was really cool.
At scale. So just to make sure people listening are following along. So SPL being the way we write searches in Splunk, Splunk processing language.
Splunk processing language, yeah, I think.
And
A/B
testing.
That is correct.
Yeah.
Well, for a while I thought it was parsing language, and then when I was a customer, and then my sales engineer was like, I hate to correct you, but it is not that.
There's too many acronyms. It's hard to keep them straight sometimes.
Yeah, and A/B testing. So that's like we break our population into two groups, A and B, and we'll like expose one to one sort of experience and the other to a base case and see if we see different behaviors at scale, like that kind of thing.
Yeah. So what they did, like I said, it was all hotel stuff, right? So there would be like every other room would have we'd have like our baseline in every other room, and then what we were testing in the other rooms, right? And stuff like that. So
that's actually really cool. I mean, not many companies, maybe not every, but maybe not many, actually take such a scientific approach or are able to take such a scientific approach to
it. They grew this a lot I was there for about 5 years. And the process grew a lot and matured. It was really cool because by the end of it, before I left, we were actually like my team was actually in all of the product engineering meetings to talk about what should be in the data that they send back. So we helped design the events to answer the questions, and that was kind of cool too. So they used Splunk to also validate that all of the data came in the right format and that data wasn't inaccurate, stuff like that. So they did the testing in Splunk before they shipped it to
neat
production. Yeah.
So around what version of Splunk or what year were we talking?
Oh God, I can't tell you version. We started using it in 2013. So whatever version was 2013.
Yeah, version 5, version 6.
Yeah. I know I was on version 6. I don't remember if we started version 5 or started version 6. I don't remember.
I want to say 6 launched in 2013, if I'm not mistaken.
So we were probably 6. Yeah, we were probably 6. And then and we were small. We were so small. I can't remember how much data we brought in a day, but it was just a single search head and indexer. Like we didn't have any clusters or anything. It was just one thing that ran everything. Which was, I mean, and so then when I started here at Splunk, and we had at the time, this was before cloud, so we were on-prem, and we had 3 search head clusters, and I can't even tell you how many singleton search heads and indexer. And I was like, I was out of my depth for a while trying to figure out how like a distributed environment worked because I didn't have one before.
Yep.
Oh wow.
It was kind of like this. I was bigger than the size of like if you had a local one on your home computer, right? But it was.
But not much.
Yeah, it was at that level though, where it's all in one server, and you can have different components.
Well, I mean that's. Customers, if they don't know, they do need to know this. It's like, going from a standalone server or a server and a couple of indexers. Beyond that, it's huge. It's a big jump in terms. It's
a learning curve. But you get the hang of it, and now we're on cloud, and we have multiple. We have a dev environment, production environment. We have multiple, the indexer clusters and the search heads and cluster everything.
I want to get into that. Was there anything in between that we want to make sure we touch before we get into kind of like your current role in that Splunk instance that I want to dig into?
Yeah, so I'm curious. So while you went from, what was the company? It was
called Sonify Solutions.
Sonify.
Yeah, I'd heard of the name.
Yeah, I've heard of it too, but I was like, have I heard of it because I know Clara?
There's a good chance. Also, though, if you stay at hotels, like Comp was at, I can't remember what hotel Comp was at. They have a lot of Vegas hotels, so there's a good chance when you've been to a .comp, you have likely stayed at a hotel that they have. So when you turn on the TV, like the remote might say Sonify, it might not. But like the screen you're looking at probably says it. I don't know for sure anymore because I don't see their product much, but I do every once in a while. I'll run into I'll be at a hotel I'll turn on the TV and I'm like, oh, I know this.
Yeah.
So
no, I've
so
seen the
while
brand around, so that's cool.
now you made it into the trust, and I can't remember timeline. Did you achieve that milestone as a customer?
I did. Yeah, so we started using it 2013. My first comp was 2015, I think.
DC.
And then I got
Was it?
what?
DC.
No, he said that was in DC.
No, it was the
Florida.
last Vegas comp before it.
Oh yeah.
So I think so it was
MGM.
Vegas, and then was it Disney the next year, and then
Mhm.
DC, and then Disney, and then Vegas again, I think.
Something like that, yeah.
So it was that last year in Vegas before it moved to Disney. And so I think that was 2015, and then I think I was a trustee 2016.
Oh, nice.
And that's probably one of those is probably when I met you. Because the trust was kind of like, hey, I got a lot of new friends suddenly. That was pretty cool.
Yeah, it's like an instant family.
Yeah.
How, and you can answer this in any way you'd like. What were you doing so passionately in the community that you feel made you rise to the trust level?
Yeah, so that first conf I was at, it was the first year they did the SPLing Bee, and I won it. But I remember I was sitting there, and if I know you all know this, but anyone watching, Charlie Huggard, super awesome
We've
guy.
had him on.
Charlie, who was sitting in front of me, and I didn't know him because it was my first conf. I didn't know anybody. Charlie's sitting in front of me. He has his fez on.
Mm-hmm.
And I look, my coworker's sitting next to me, and I look at my coworker and I make a joke about stealing his fez because he's just, I could just pop it right off of his head. And I made a comment about it, and Charlie, being Charlie, very friendly, very nice, very patient, he turns around and he's like, he explains to me what it is and how you actually get it. And so then after that, I was like, oh, it's on. This is my new challenge. And
Gauntlet thrown.
Right. Yes. And so then what happened was I really started getting invested in the community. So at the time it was IRC. So I was on IRC all the time. I was answering a ton of questions on Splunk Answers and stuff like that. I don't remember if I think this was after I became SplunkTrust, but I started the user group in South Dakota, which was kind of a flop because we were the only Splunk customers.
Because there's only like 3 of you there.
It didn't really land. We brought in potential customers to a couple of them. People like companies that had been thinking about it. I don't know if they ever transitioned to became customers or not, but it did not last long.
Maybe something more broad, like, I don't know, computers. Hey, anybody use computers here?
Yes, yeah. So it was. I tried. And then so I remember when they do the voting and stuff for who gets into the trust or whatever it is, and
we called it a hammer fight, actually.
Yeah, the hammer fight. I actually have my hammer.
Oh, nice. I don't even have one of those. That's awesome.
It's the mod squad.
Is that for your answers mod?
For answers moderator, yeah. So I remember though, I think it was Jason Hupka, and oh my gosh, I'm blanking on who it was.
Pablo or Easy or Rachel before that.
Yeah.
Patrick Pablo.
I remember they reached out to me and they're like, yeah, I remember. We were like, who is this person? Like, they came out of nowhere, and because I just was like at the top of the karma points, or what is karma now, I guess. And then they did the 1 year they did the challenge for a free conf pass for people with the most karma points. Mm-hmm. And then I couldn't keep up after that. I lost a lot of stamina on that because so many people started, which was great. But so that's kind of how I really got invested. But what made me more known, I guess, too, I shouldn't say more known, but one of the things that really helped was just the networking at Conf. So I met people who aren't here anymore, but Chris Gales, he ran the docs team. He was like the first Splunker I ever met, and he helped me.
That's a great first Splunker to meet.
I know. It was funny because I was asking him, at Conf, he had he had a booth for documentation at Conf that year. It was like the only year that happened. And I went up to his booth and I asked him about a command I've been using that's not in the docs site. And so I was like, why isn't this here? And he's like, oh, let me introduce you to this person, Chris Pride. And so Chris introduced me to Chris, and we had this whole conversation about this command and stuff. And so I started networking and meeting more people. And then
so for people listening, okay, so Chris Gales ran documentation at Splunk for many years, and basically set the tone that we all love and enjoy, and that like very like feedback channel oriented type of feel, and the fact that you could read the docs and you don't feel like you need a
docs in the
PhD.
business.
You literally wrote the book on docs. There's a book.
There is a book.
Is docs. Chris Pride was like head of our search language, right?
Yeah.
And the command that you were asking for?
It was
you've got to know.
I know what it is. I know what it did. I can't remember what it is. It's unsupported. It was the one, oh my God, I can't believe I can't remember what it is. It's where you have two sub searches that you can put in together. I can't believe I can't remember what this is called.
Was it simply a sub search?
It was so you could like append two different so you could have a sub search that did stats count by A, and then another one that stats count by B. So it would use the same. I cannot believe I can't remember what this is.
It could be just append. It might have been.
No. It was like a. I know what it is. I keep wanting to say make results, and I'm like, that's not it.
Yeah, because there were some commands that I remember like not having documented, and I was curious if it was going to be the same one that I was thinking of. But they have created a new section, I think probably since then, called internal commands, which are essentially, they all have hey, this is internal unsupported experimental. So I didn't know if it was like no-op was used for like comments, or was it collapse? I mean, it kind of doesn't matter that much.
I'm
but
looking at.
I was curious.
I found this. I'm trying to see if it's got.
Yeah, now we have not make results. Multi-search.
Yeah, it's similar to multi-search, but that's not what it was. It was multi-report.
Multi-report?
I don't know that one. Interesting.
Yeah, well, it's undocumented still.
Neat.
So back in the day, like back then, one of the things that I really liked about Splunk, but like engineering at the time, was they would actually release new features hidden in the product. So it was like an interesting strategy of, we want to make sure that this code is like stable and doesn't introduce bugs with like existing code. So like part of features would be available there, and then people could almost like early adopt if they knew how to do it, but it wasn't supported because it's not documented. And so like I remember like discovering things like commands and stuff and being like, oh, is this coming out? And some of the commands were like, no, we will never document that one.
No, that one's for support.
This was one of those, I think. I cannot remember. This was 10 years ago ish, almost.
Yeah.
Maybe 8 years ago. But so I can't quite remember the reason why it wasn't. But Chris gave me this long explanation about why it wasn't actually getting documented, why it was unsupported. But it was like meeting them, and then the rest of the people I kept meeting at Splunk was so cool. I learned a lot as a customer just from talking to the different employees and the other customers. That's the best part of Conf, right?
Yeah, that's my favorite part of Conf is the networking. And you see lots of cool things, but you're learning things from people that are excited about it. And
I think the other thing that. Oh, sorry.
Oh, well, and I think something that you experienced that I always admired was like, I went to my first Conf and I was like, wait, so like the actual engineers are here just like hanging out with me, and like the PMs who like create all this stuff are just hanging out with me, and everyone was like so down to earth and accessible. And that was such a cool culture, because I was used to like working with like the big blue, like these big stuffy companies where like the docs are like, you need a PhD to read them, and then like you're never going to talk to the people that write the code or anything. And they were just like, oh yeah, oh, you like that feature? Yeah, maybe we'll do that, or some, it was so down to earth, and you learn so much.
Well, and then as you get to be a little bit more known in the community, right? Like, so I was part of the trust and whatever. I was doing a lot on answers. One of the first years I was in the trust, I remember going like it was like my first comp after the trust, or maybe it was the year I got in. I remember people would come up to me and they're like, "Oh, you're Clara," and I'm like, "Hi," and they're like, "Oh, your answer was so helpful," blah blah blah, and I'm like, and it was awesome, but really like just such a different experience from just like my first comp to whatever, like my second or third comp, where people actually knew who I was and were thanking me for my help with them. And
back then we used to print our like handles on our name tags, right?
I still do.
I still do.
I still do too.
I totally do that.
Yeah.
Because then you like meet someone and they're like, "Oh, you're Slosh Burch." Like, oh my God.
Yeah.
And it's like, we know each other digitally and now we're meeting in real life.
And it's so cool.
It's so cool.
It's one of my, that's because I do that. I still do that. It's not hard for me because it's C Merriman. So it's, but now I go with the Clara-fication tag too a lot. So people know me by that now too. I actually
to clarify that is also your like blog series, right?
Or
is it even more than that?
It is my blog. It's my blog series and my comp presentations. At least a majority of my comp presentations, I have the Clara-fication.
It's like your brand.
Yeah, it's like my brand. I really want to do. I haven't posted a blog. I realized it the other day. I don't think I've posted one since like 2020.
It's been forever.
It's been a few years
to do that.
But it's funny because I have a bunch of them started. I have like 10 blog posts started that I just haven't had time to finish. And so now they're all outdated though, because they're years old and I have to go back through and fix it. Part of me is like, oh, holiday break is coming. Here's your chance. So we'll see.
Holiday break. I will do work.
Yes. It's fun work though.
It's fun. Yeah.
It's different than my normal work. So.
Yeah.
So I want to hear about the normal work. I want to know kind of like, how did you join Splunk and what was the, what
get here?
Because you're an SPL nerd. That's what we've learned so far.
Yes.
How did you take that forward?
Yeah. So like I said, I was networking with employees and then I was in the trust and stuff, and I got to know more people in the community, more people in the company. And I remember I was at this point in my career where I just needed to grow more. And I kind of had hit a point where I couldn't grow where I was. And so I needed to expand. Right. So I started looking around. I started trying to think about who I wanted to work with, where I wanted to go, what I wanted to do. And I applied at a ton of places. I did not get a ton of offers, but it was funny because I got 3 offers all at once. So I wasn't getting anything.
When it rains, it pours.
Yeah. And then I had to make a decision about who I wanted to go with. And ultimately it was Splunk. So how I got it at Splunk though was, Chris on the docs team, I was talking to him and I'm like, do you know of any openings? Do you know of anyone at Splunk that needs my expertise? And he reached out to the manager at the time. He's not here any longer. And reached out to him and was like, hey, yeah, send him your resume. He's looking for someone, whatever. So then I filled out the application. I got a hold of that manager and stuff. And we did this whole thing. And I was actually flying out to San Francisco for the SplunkTrust Summit in 2018. And so I used that as my in-person interview time too.
Nice.
So it all lined up. So I was like, they're like, oh, can you fly out? And I'm like, I'm going to be there in like a week. So can we just wait?
Wow.
So
that was really good timing.
Yeah, it was great timing. And so I was there for the SplunkTrust Summit and I interviewed, I met the team, all that stuff. And they liked me enough. I guess I got the job. And I've been on the same team. So I was, I initially came on to do similar stuff to what I was doing at Sonify. So a lot of like the business metrics and stuff like that. It changed soon to be less business focused and more back end focused because they needed the help on the back end side. So I wasn't doing quite as much front end as I thought. But it was great because I was learning the back end, which I didn't really know before. And so then I started doing that. I've been on the same team the whole time, all 5 years I've been at Splunk.
Oh my gosh, that's so uncommon.
I know, I love it though. I love
yeah.
the team itself, like the team makeup has changed a lot over the 5 years. And we used to be in IT and now we're in security. So it's changed. Like we've moved around.
Yeah, things moved around you more than.
Yeah, but I didn't move. I've stayed here.
Yeah.
I've done
cool.
And my team has been responsible for the same stuff, right? We run an internal Splunk environment for corporate security and corporate IT. The tools we've used changed. The people on the team have changed. The current team makeup is A+. My team is awesome. I wouldn't trade them for anything. And so I started as just a junior engineer.
A lonely engineer.
Yeah, I was just a little peon, right? Like just a little cog in the machine. And then I eventually got promoted to senior engineer. And then last year, 2 years ago, I was an interim manager. And then last year I became the official manager for the team. So I've grown a lot just within the 5 years within this team.
So you went from learning the back end as like, hey, this is an exciting thing. And now you're learning learned the people engineering part.
Oh no, I'm still learning.
Yeah.
Which is another reason I'm very thankful for my team, because they are patient with me figuring out all of the people parts of managing, and not even just the people part, but the roadmap and prioritization and stuff. There's a whole bunch to management that I was unfamiliar with.
How do you find that transition? Because I know, like when I first started working at Splunk, one of the big topics in the industry was this recognition that just because someone is like at the top of their level engineering wise doesn't mean that the right move for them is into people management. People thought like, oh, you get promoted up into being a manager, and then you had a bunch of really bad managers, because that's not what they were good at. What they were good at is engineering, and that's what they wanted to do. They didn't want to manage people.
I've seen that firsthand, right? Like people who are technical trying to be not technical, and it's hard because they have a hard time stepping back to see
and letting go,
right? Because they want to keep doing all the technical work. But I reached a point where I was trying to figure out what I wanted to do. We have like career discussions, right? Like, what do you want to do? Blah blah blah. And I had about 1,000 ideas. I'm like, oh, it'd be really cool to learn Python and be a software developer, or it'd be really cool to, all of these thoughts in my head. And then what I realized though was I was capping out my knowledge for technical information. So it was either I was going to lose technical information to learn a new tool, because we use a lot of tools on my team. So we use, we have automation, we have containers, we have all sorts of stuff, and we kept adding new stuff. And I'm like,
and those tools, just to interrupt, are for basically the operations of keeping the data flowing, the Splunk environment and operations.
Yeah. Okay. It's all of our.
That's the context is the same. Okay.
Yeah. So, like I said, we have pipelines for automation. We use Terraform and Ansible and Docker and all sorts of stuff. And I was getting to this point where I'm like, I can't retain any more information. Things
are going out.
Yeah, I'm like, I can't keep learning all of this. I was just reaching this point where my technical skills were I just couldn't keep up with the rest of my team. But if you can't tell, I have soft skills. I
was about to say that. I was trying to figure out how to word it correctly.
Yeah, no, I have a decent amount of soft skills, and so it became just a thing for me where I was like, you know what? I think managing is where I can grow more by growing more of those soft skills, but still having that technical knowledge of understanding how to grow the team technically. But also I have very smart people on my team that can help me guide technical decisions as well. So it was a no-brainer for me when I hit that point where I felt like I couldn't grow more technically with my current position. I think I could if I tried something new, right? But at the time I just couldn't. And so I was like, you know what, management that's where I'm going to hit it. And I went I went back to school. I got my master's in management. So I got an MBA.
Cool.
Last year, 2 years ago, I can't even remember now. And then after I got my master's degree in business, then I became the official manager of the team. And
so you did that while you were working at Splunk, like in the...
I did, yeah. So it was a very unsocial year for me. I worked full time doing my engineering work, and then at night and on weekends I was doing schoolwork and learning stuff. And it was one of those like kind of learn at your own pace programs. And so
at least it was that. I mean, it didn't break Clara, so that's good.
No, I finished it in a year. I did my whole master's in a year. Because
Never mind.
I was like, you know what, I'm just going to do this all. And I didn't have a life, like a social life for about a year. But I'm very thankful for getting my master's. It taught me a lot. There was a lot of really good information in there that I had no idea about.
So to awesome. Flatter you more. So I did my MBA, and it was in a accelerated program, treated like an executive program. So like they would bring us food that we would stay in the classroom, the teachers would change. Like it was a very structured thing that like revolved around this cohort of students, and it was accelerated. Okay. That was 18 months, and that was a part-time program. And you did a part-time program in a year. That's how intense you worked through that.
But yeah.
I guess I have to just, we're talking about college experiences. Let's see. I flunked out twice, so I did that. But
did you do it in a year?
No. Yeah, it's about 18 months. I flunked out twice, 2 different colleges in 18 months. But it worked out. You know why? I was actually a professor for a few quarters at Emory University, teaching them Splunk in the Clara-fication work. So that worked out.
Cool.
But you did graduate from the School of Hard Knocks. Is that not right?
Okay. Yes, that is correct.
Yeah. Clara, so what is your domain, like your team? How many people do you have reporting to? What's your domain of responsibility? Like,
So right now I have 5 engineers. At one point in my team, before I was a manager, I think my team was like 12 people or something.
Wow.
So we're running thin, lean and mean, but like I said, the folks, the 5 engineers on my team, they are amazing. We also are standing up. So we just moved to security this year. And we moved into a center of excellence within security. So my job is the same. The team is responsible for the same stuff. But we're going to focus a lot on helping customers understand how we use Splunk internally as well.
Oh, neat. All right,
yeah,
good.
So we have some.
Because I was about to ask, like, can I ask you about this or this or this?
Yeah,
you just said the answer already.
We have some customer meetings every once in a while. Because it just started, they haven't come in a lot. But I think I've probably had like, since comp, I've probably had maybe 3 or 4 customer engagements where we talk about Splunk. And so that's a new focus for our team.
And
too.
To make sure it's clear for other people, like those meetings are essentially like a customer to customer meeting, right? Like you're talking about, you are a customer of Splunk. You just happen to be an internal customer.
Exactly. Yeah. So
running on Splunk Cloud, and here's how we do things. How do you do things? Like that kind of.
Yeah, it is. It's so we have like a presentation, but it's only really to guide the conversation. It's not like we have to get through this whole thing. And so a lot of it is we'll talk about how we do RBAC, like what our RBAC journey has been for access, right? Or how our architecture looks and how we do capacity planning, stuff like that. And then it's very interactive. So if they want to ask us questions and interrupt us, stuff like that, then, we talk about that. A lot of the times we talk about our pain points, and a lot of the customers have the same pain points. So it's a good thing to talk about issues that we're both facing, or that one of us is facing, and how the other has worked around it, or something like that.
I would not mind going into some of those specifics if you can. And I've got one area that I'm interested in, and Burch, I hope you have some ideas as well. But I want to talk about how y'all got to Splunk Cloud, Because I know that was not easy, because you and I had discussed that maybe a couple of years ago.
Yeah, it wasn't easy. It was hard because like I said, we had this huge on-prem environment. We only had, I don't know how this worked. We had one indexer cluster, and I feel like there was like 20 some hosts on it. But then we had 3 search head clusters for that indexer cluster, plus like, I don't even know, like 20 plus single search heads, something like that. Like just a crazy amount of search heads, all for this one indexer cluster. How that indexer cluster didn't just fall over, I don't know. But so we had this huge spread out environment. And what we ended up doing, I was not in charge of the cloud migration. That was we had hired someone in PS. I can't remember who. We had hired someone in PS to help us.
I remember recommending that to somebody. I didn't know that
I remember
it ever got taken up. So that's awesome.
We did, yeah. So we hired someone in PS to help us go through what we currently had, and they wrote up like probably a 30-page document on issues that they noticed in the environment and recommendations for the migration, stuff like that. So they created this whole thing for us. And then Mason Morales was on the team at the time. And he was the one that worked with PS to actually do the migration. And I should lead the migration. We all helped with certain aspects of it, right? But so I don't know all of the nitty gritty.
Well, pick something that might have been notable, but I mean, just now that you just had to say
a notable event, even.
Yeah. I mean, you had to change the structure of the environment drastically.
So one of the things we did was cut back on who we supported. So originally we supported everybody. We were like Oprah, right? Like you get a search. That's why we had so many search heads, because each team had their own.
Give them a search head tiered to the. Okay, gotcha.
So we helped anybody in the company that wanted it. And that's unscalable in general, right? Like we can't support that. So that was one of the things I remember when we moved to cloud. We helped these other teams either get their own environment if they needed it, or they just stopped using it. I guess, I don't know. I don't remember. There was a lot of teams. I think a lot of them consolidated into other environments, if I remember right. But that was one thing I remember to really, we scaled back the architecture in general. And I can't remember what we started at. So like I said, we had like a 20 some odd indexer cluster and multiple search head clusters and stuff. And when we moved to cloud, I remember, I think we had a 3 search head cluster. We probably had like probably a similar size indexer cluster, I bet. We might have brought it down a little bit because we didn't have all these other search heads coming in. And then we had 2 single search heads for enterprise security and ITSI. So those had their own search heads and stuff. So, and then since then, though, we have I can't remember the exact number. We have like 60 some odd indexers in our cluster now.
Wow.
And a five search heads in our search head cluster. And then we would love to put enterprise security on a search head cluster, but right now we can't have 2 search head clusters in our stack because we're on, as painful as it is, we're on an older version right now because there's a lot of dependencies to get us upgraded to the Noah or Victoria, whatever.
Yeah, so you must be on Classic Edition.
We're on Classic, yeah. So there's a lot of, we hit a lot of limitations right now, but we're working to move forward. It's just to migrate over, there's a lot of things that have to happen.
I'm glad that you're on that, because the pain of migrating is the same it would be for a customer, right? So how better for us to learn it? I mean, whether it's called that or not, you are dog fooding exactly what our customers go through.
Yeah, and that was one of the main points of moving to cloud too, was so that we could provide feedback to products, to support, to all of these different teams about the issues that we might face. So if we have an incident that comes up from something, whatever it might be, and we have to file a support ticket for it, it's the same process that external customers go through. And so
just in the spirit of kind of like, company value open, but don't get yourself in trouble. Like, were there any like, okay, this is some BS, I can't believe that we had to go through this and that a customer would have to go through this?
There's some times, I won't give any super specific information, but there's some times I know that I don't understand how an external customer, like how this would engage with an external customer, because I have access to the Jira tickets that are created. I have access to the support, all of this stuff, right? So I can see what's going on in the back end and all of this stuff. And there's been a few times, not a ton, but a few times where we have actually had to get on calls with the support team to talk through troubleshooting like anything that's come up. And I don't know if that's how external customers have to deal with it, and to keep following up. And so, because they'll create a Jira ticket to do whatever has to get done.
You have to escalate to engineering or whatever.
But we don't get emails from the Jira ticket. We get emails from support. So support has to, so as an external customer, I don't think they have any idea of what's really going on. And I feel fortunate because I can track all of that and see what's really going on. So it is sometimes as an external customer, I feel that pain, because I understand that if you don't have access to all the same things, so you don't know.
Makes sense.
And it's tough. It's a tough thing. It'd be nice if they'd be able to open all of that information up for like what stack you own to show you updates on your tickets.
So do you feel like the Splunk cloud, and how old is the Splunk cloud environment now?
My environment specifically?
Yeah.
3 or 4 years.
Okay. So that's quite a while. Is it a success? Or there's some points where you're like, we're gonna have to go back?
There's both.
Yeah.
Both. There's times because my team is very technical. We have all been Splunk admins. And so there are times when it is very difficult for us to have to wait on support to schedule and to do so, like app installs and upgrades and all that stuff. We have to file support tickets and they get scheduled and goes through validation and all this stuff.
Windows and
And
but I also find, like, because I'm a former admin and I'm watching as my customer goes through that, and I'm like, oh boy, it takes a long time for this to get done. And then I look at the Jira tick and I'm like, oh boy, I never was this thorough with like checking things.
They have a lot of checks, and that's the thing. Like I said, you don't see the Jira as a customer, so you can't see everything that's happening in the background.
Yeah.
But that is one of the things. It's tough for us because we're like, well, we could get this done faster, right? And that's hard because we want to move. But there's a lot of benefits that support handles for us, right? There'll be incidents that get spun up and they just take care of it. There are times though we have like 100 alerts that they monitor data ingest. So they monitor like our forwarders, deployment server, the search heads, the indexers. We have a bunch of alerts for all sorts of components in Splunk. And there are things we monitor for that cloud does not monitor for one reason or another. And so we file tickets a lot for issues that we know exist, but they don't have monitors for. And the tricky part is many times they don't have run books or playbooks to remediate those issues because they're not issues that they monitor for. And so this has helped them develop playbooks for issues that other customers might face too. So it's sometimes it's hard to be on cloud, but it is like having that support to help us with all of our issues is awesome, because it frees up my team to be able to work on other like project work and not just operational work.
Yeah, I bet you're not over there collecting diags anymore.
I am not. I don't know the last time I did a diag. They do ask, support asks for them sometimes.
From like forwarders. Like from forwarders?
No, from our cloud environment. Like
okay.
Every once in a while it's rare, but sometimes we run into the like issues where because we can still deploy custom apps. And so we'll have issues every once in a while where the app deployment fails. And then we have to engage support to fix it. I don't know how they do it in the back end, but they have to fix it. And
I think a lot of these, some of the details, I'm not going to promise a specific thing, but a lot of this gets easier on the Victoria Edition, where they've actually pushed a lot of automation.
And that's one of the things we're at this point where we really want to move to Victoria for all the benefits that Victoria has. But we have a lot of dependencies on things that aren't supported anymore. And so like we want to move to federated search because we have
you're still using hybrid search.
We distribute to another internal stack. So we want to migrate to federated search, but there's all of this stuff that has to happen before we can do any of that. And then it's the same with Victoria, it's the same with everything. So there's a lot of project work being done between my team and 2 other internal Splunk stack teams to get all of us in the right position to then upgrade and make the environment up to date.
What's like a big, almost like the big topic right now? Like maybe it's the big like, oh, we're all working towards, getting the environment ready for Victoria, or like, is there sort of a big campaign going on that everyone's been focusing on?
Yeah. So yes, one of our biggest things that we want to accomplish is we want to get our environments decoupled so that we can move to Victoria and stuff like that. That is not as simple as it sounds. And so that's something we've been working towards all year. But the main priority now for my team outside of that is we're working on re-architecting our ingest tier. And so I mentioned we use Docker. So we have any heavy forwarder that my team owns is on Docker. So we have containers, they do all, they do what they need to do. And we want to re-architect that to be more efficient and improve the build process and deployment process and stuff, because it's kind of tricky right now. And then outside of that too, we want to, we're testing out the edge processor right now. So we have a POC going for the edge processor, because what we want to end up doing is have some sort of subscription service where we use the edge processor to bring in all the data, do the obfuscation, do whatever it needs to do, and then route it everywhere it needs to go, because we're not the only Splunk stack. There's a product stack. There's all sorts of stacks within Splunk, but sometimes we need the same data. And so we want to create a service where we bring in application logs for whatever it is, or audit logs for whatever it is, but then it can come to my stack for security purposes, and it can go to the other stack for just like their regular tracking purposes, right?
Right.
So
how do they do that now? They have multiple forwarders?
So we have, right now we use props and transforms to do really disgusting routing.
Okay.
And so we have multiple outputs.conf to send to wherever it needs to go. We use props and transforms to do the filtering and whatever it needs to do, because we have to do source type renaming. We have to do all like filtering out for specific events, stuff like that. So it's not good.
Yeah. Now, have you had a chance to mess with some of the things like the newer things that we have, ingest actions, edge processor, some of those?
So we're doing a POC on edge processor right now to make sure it can manage all of the data that we bring in, because we have a lot. So we want to make sure that it can handle the load, that it can do we have a handful of things we want to test for, but we're also working with that products team to provide feedback to the product as well, so that they can improve on anything we find an issue with. But we just kicked that off, I don't know, a few weeks ago. So we're still learning the edge processor. We want to look into ingest actions and all sorts of stuff. There's a lot of really cool stuff, I think, that's coming down the pipe for products that we're all really excited for. But so yeah, there's a lot. But that's our main priority right now, is to improve our data ingestion, just to kind of make it self-service as much as we can, more operational, efficient, and all that, buzzwordy stuff.
What do you like? What's your preferred route of data? Like universal forwarder, heavy forwarder, heck?
Personally, I love heck. I love heck because we aren't responsible for the data. I shouldn't say. So when someone sends us data through heck and for some reason it stops, that's not my team that has to fix that. That's their team that has to fix
it's like
that.
simpler too from
It's
the
so much.
Splunk
Yeah.
administration.
So my team's responsible. If we own the forwarder, and we have to do the TA upgrades and the configurations and all that stuff, right?
And why did it stop sending? And
and we have to look at the logs, and we have to do all sorts of stuff. But with HEC, we still monitor for data that might be an outage based on an expected frequency. But we let the data owner know, like, hey, your data's an outage. Can you work on fixing it? And we don't have to fix it because it's HEC.
And how do you monitor for that? Are you using like just metadata command and seeing if it would stop sending?
We have a project for after the data ingest project to improve on this by using like machine learning or whatever it is that we end up wanting to use. But so right now we have 4 alerts for data for indexes, host sources, and source types. So we monitor all indexes, but sometimes we might need to monitor a host instead, because there could be 5 hosts, like our domain controllers. We want to make sure the domain controllers, all of them, are sending data, not just that data is coming into the index from maybe 2 of the 5 or something, right? So we monitor hosts or sources, whatever. We get more granular if we need to. So we have 4 searches. They're all basically the same, except for like the stats by. But what we do is we have a lookup table that has all of the indexes, the sources, the source types, etc. So 4 different lookups to attach to those 4 different alerts. And it has the index information, like it'll have the index. It has how often we expect the data to come in. And that's not like the cron schedule or how often it pulls the data. It's how often it's coming in through index time, because it might pull every 5 minutes, but maybe there's only new data every hour or something, right? So we have a search we use to check that when we onboard new data. So we look at like tstats count by whatever by index time, and then we check how often it's coming in, and then we use that. So it's a static threshold that we have in this lookup, and that's what it searches
to
against.
Clarify for other people. So like index time, what you're referring to there is like conventionally or traditionally when you're looking at searches, you're playing with the underscore time field. But there's actually a hidden set of fields that are documented that are underscore like index time, and so you can search like index time earliest and latest, and what that represents is what time it was actually indexed. And the point Clara is getting at is like, just because it came in now, there could have been latency. So you could do a search. I always tell people, like, if you search over the last 5 minutes, how do you know that all the data over the last 5 minutes actually arrived within 5 minutes? So that's where the index time can come in handy.
Yeah, it's super handy too, the index time, because just as a for instance, there's some data that we'll get in right now. Index time right now just came in, but the timestamp on it is for December 1st, right? So we don't want to go by underscore time, because depending on how the timestamps are configured for the event, we could get a monthly report on the 31st, but it could be for every day or something, right? So we use index time, so we know, okay, every day we get the day's worth of data. So underscore time might be what's in the actual event, but we only get the data once a day or something. So that's how, and then we have in that same lookup, we have like who owns that data and stuff, so that we can send them alerts to say your data's an outage.
With HEC, like HEC being kind of the preferred way, is it a little bit of a free-for-all? So like with a forwarder, you can have kind of a data onboarding process where people contact you, hey, I want to like get this new data in, and here's the servers it's on, and here's the file path, and blah, blah, blah. And you can kind of define the source type and everything. In theory, once someone has a token, can they just send data in over HEC? And now, like, even if it's a different source type, it's going to come in with that assigned arbitrary source type name. And have you run into problems with that?
Yeah. So yes, people can just send data. We're working on a way. This is one of the things we're trying to improve upon, is auditing our data, so that if so this goes for like the number of events that come in, if they drop or increase, we like if they increase a lot, someone's probably sending new data that they shouldn't, right?
Yeah.
So we want to monitor for new source types that come in, all that kind of stuff. They obviously can't send to a new index because we have to create that index. We create every HEC token is a 1-to-1 for its index. So they can only send, if they have HEC token A, they can only send it index A, right? So if someone tried to use that token to send to another index, it just wouldn't work, right? But they could send whatever they wanted to that index.
Right.
So this is one of the initiatives that we started this year is we've been really updating all of our policies and procedures and stuff. So we focused most on RBAC this year. Next year, I'm going to focus on the data onboarding. So an actual policy and process and procedure, and then how to audit and enforce data ingest. So people aren't just sending it. So we have it all the time. We see someone will spin up a forwarder and they have the outputs.conf already from another forwarder. So they just start sending data to us. And then our indexers start queuing because it can't handle the load of whatever they're sending and stuff. And so we're trying, it's not just HEC that has that problem, right? It's anything. So that's an initiative for next year that I have to focus on now that RBAC is wrapping up.
Do you have like an account team that you work with?
I don't.
That's oh.
As an internal, yeah.
You know if there's anyone actually listed as like your sales engineer?
Not as a sales engineer, but
I think Burch wants to be your SE.
I think I am listed as the sales engineer for many years. Yeah.
We had an account owner, but I don't think we have an account owner anymore. And they weren't really our account owner because we were internal. So they were just assigned to our account, but they didn't actually handle our account. They didn't
do anything.
And we're actually just facing that right now because of the edge processor. We need to work with sales to get, because right now we've just been using Splunk Show.
I got you. We'll talk about that offline.
But yeah, because I'm trying to figure out. I gotta figure out how to get us an actual edge processor hooked up, because we face this every time we need to increase our license or do whatever. It's a lot of trying to track down the right people because there's no real process for an internal environment.
I think we can help here offline.
I'm sure you
we'll
can
do some stuff. We're almost out of time here though. I want to make sure that we have the opportunity to close things out gracefully.
Well, I think this might be an interesting tidbit to kind of bring us back to the beginning. So I was teasing about like who's listed as the sales engineer on the account. And the reason it's me is because way back in the day when I was working on the Splunk Success Framework, I was working with who hired you at the time, and we were dog fooding the Splunk Success Framework, and that's
I remember that.
Yeah, and that was where the conversation about moving to cloud came from. You probably remember, like, we were both editing Confluence pages. I remember
you're still. I think some of our Confluence pages are so outdated that you're still the last
editor. Yeah. And so I was, as part of like dog fooding that, I listed myself as the account and sales engineer, and I still get notifications every time we open a support ticket and stuff. But I bring this back to you because I do remember at the time how excited that hiring manager was to be able to hire you. And he was like, I can't tell you who, but I'm going to have an interview. I was there because I was at that trust summit with you.
Yeah.
And he was like, I was meeting with him, and he was like, I can't tell you who, but I'm gonna have an interview.
He was really excited. I remember. He was really
and I think it's clear like how great of a cultural fit you are. Obviously, you've got this brand that you've created. You're very splunky. You're very passionate. And I have to say, sort of in conclusion, like, this has been a great episode, a great conversation. I feel like we could keep going on and on about this.
The three of us.
yeah, exactly. So I mean, any sort of final thoughts or anything, Hal, Clara?
I don't know.
I think that we could go into other directions maybe another time in the future.
Yeah,
I would be happy to join again. Talking to you two is always fun.
You were in South Dakota, but you're in Colorado now.
I am in Colorado. I'm actually heading to South Dakota tomorrow morning to visit family.
Okay.
For the
Awesome.
holidays, yeah. But
It's
I'm
beautiful
I'm
up
in
there.
Denver. Sorry, what?
Cool.
I said it's beautiful up there. Both of those places, actually.
Yeah.
Well, Denver, sure.
Okay, there's parts of South Dakota which are beautiful. How
Yes,
about that?
I'll agree to that.
Badlands, for example.
Yeah, I'm on the other side of the state.
okay.
I
well,
didn't
can't
know
speak for
Clara
that.
was in Colorado, and then I happened to be there. I'm so sad. I went to a
that's
Splunk
right.
office on my vacation and attended the town hall and was like sitting behind you or next to you or something.
Yeah, I
And I'm like,
remember.
what are you doing here? What are you doing here? Yeah.
Yeah.
It was nice.
Yeah, the Boulder office is nice. I like
Yeah.
it. They had their holiday thing today, but I am busy preparing for my trip tomorrow, so I did not go.
Well, thank you very much for hanging out with us.
Yeah, thanks for having me. Always a
I
pleasure.
hope everyone here feels a little more clarified about your background. And yeah, thanks for attending, and thanks everyone for listening. And happy splunking.
Happy holidays.
Same
Happy
to you.
holidays. Bye.
Bye.
Hey, wait, hold on. Cut.